Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll delve into events that occurred in Virginia, USA. The summer of 2005 was coming to an end, and fall was supposed to be a new stage of life for the 17-year-old Taylor Bell. She was looking forward to starting her first year at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond and making plans for the future. However, Taylor disappeared before classes even started. Taylor Marie Bell was born on October 13, 1987. She was the only child in the family of Janet Pelissara and Matt Bell, who divorced when she was about 2 years old. Taylor lived with her mother in Vienna, Virginia. She graduated from high school in 2005. In August, she moved to Richmond to start her first year at Virginia Commonwealth University in September. Like many young people headed for college, Taylor Bell was both excited and nervous about starting a new chapter in her life. Like many young people today, she wrote about this and many other things online in her blog. One of her blog posts said, "I just graduated from high school and now I'm off to Richmond. I'm looking forward to meeting people that are in Richmond because I only know a few people down there. But I love to meet new people in general, so feel free to message me whenever to chat." Before the start of the school year, Taylor moved into a student dorm. She shared a room with another freshman girl. In a phone conversation with her mother, Taylor told her that she had met many new people and had become friends with her roommate Emma. On the evening of September 5, 2005, Emma's boyfriend came to her dorm room. She wanted to spend time with him, so Taylor decided not to interfere with him. She took the keys to her room and car, said she would return in a few hours, and left to meet some friends. Taylor never came back that evening. The next day, Emma went to class, and when she returned to the dorm room in the evening, she noticed that Taylor's things were in the same places as 24 hours ago. That meant that she had never returned to her room, and even more strangely, she missed the first day of school. Emma became worried and decided to contact the campus police and report her roommate missing. Taylor's car was missing too. As soon as the police received a message about the possible disappearance of one of their students, they came to inspect Taylor's dormitory. Officers noticed that some of her personal belongings, including her prescription medications, were still there. It didn't look like Taylor was planning on going anywhere. Police cars started circling the campus in search of Taylor and her vehicle. Yet, they found nothing. Any attempts to call her were met with her voicemail. The next step for the police was to call Taylor's mother, Janet. They assumed that Taylor could have gone to her mother, who lived 2 hours away from Richmond. The call from the police surprised and worried Janet because she didn't know where her daughter might be. She believed that Taylor had her first classes that day and decided not to call her during the day. Janet immediately started calling her daughter's phone, but there was no answer. Then she got in the car and drove straight to Richmond. Janet had a bad feeling about all this. After arriving and talking to the police, she went to her daughter's room, where she met Emma. Janet examined Taylor's belongings, and this only increased her concerns. Her purse, medicines, and some valuables were still there. She thought, what if someone had kidnapped her daughter and was holding her hostage? What if she needs help? Janet and Taylor were very close. After the divorce, Janet spent almost all of her time with her daughter, which undoubtedly strengthened their bond. Janet was very nervous when her daughter graduated from high school and went to college. Taylor was also nervous, but for different reasons. She was preparing to start an independent adult life, change the environment, and meet new people. Despite Janet's concerns, campus police informed her that Taylor was probably hanging out with friends and would show up soon. They had no reason to believe that she was in danger. After all, it's not unusual for young people to go somewhere to hang out and take a break from their studies. But Janet did not believe that her daughter left without telling her anything, especially since she didn't take her purse, money, and any other belongings with her. Nevertheless, the campus police started the investigation. The officers questioned Taylor's friends and acquaintances, but it didn't bring any results. No one knew where she might be. Janet appealed via television to anyone with any information to contact the police. They distributed posters with Taylor's picture throughout the city and its surroundings, and her Ford was now on the wanted list. After 10 days of no leads, campus police turned the case over to the Richmond police. They organized a task force, which included FBI officers. Since Taylor's disappearance, there had been no activity in her bank account. Her phone had been inactive too, and according to experienced detectives, it wasn't a good sign. 12 days after the disappearance, there was finally a break when Taylor's car was found on a quiet residential street about 2 miles from campus. It was unclear if the car was there from the very beginning or if someone was using it. The car was found by accident. It had the license plate stolen in Ohio. The police set up covert surveillance of the vehicle, hoping that someone would use it, but when no one approached it during the day, they allowed criminologists and employees from K-9 to do their work. A thorough inspection of the car interior revealed nothing. There were no visible traces of Taylor or anyone else inside the car. A service dog from the K-9 unit picked up a scent around the car and led police to a house a couple of blocks away. It was the house of an elderly married couple who, as investigators found out, was not related to Taylor. However, their nephew Jesse might have known Taylor because he was a skateboarder. Taylor once told her mother that she was learning to skateboard. This hobby could have brought her together with Jesse, and therefore the police suggested that he might be involved in her disappearance. Investigators searched the house, but found nothing to indicate that Taylor had ever been there. They brought Jesse to the police station for questioning. He stated that he did not know who Taylor Bell was. Besides, he had a solid alibi for the night that she disappeared. As a result, he was excluded from the list of suspects and released without any charges. Time passed, but Taylor's whereabouts remained unknown. For Janet, whose only daughter was missing, it was a living hell. The owner of the Ohio license plates that somehow ended up on Taylor's car was checked and excluded from the list of suspects as well. As it turned out, the man reported the theft of the license plates from his vehicle even before Taylor disappeared. But now the police had to answer one more question. Who put someone else's license plates on Taylor's car, and for what purpose? Detectives couldn't believe that Taylor could have disappeared without leaving any traces, but so far, they had no leads. Assuming that Taylor might be held captive, Janet appealed to the possible kidnapper through the press, with pleas to return her daughter to her. Meanwhile, the police found their first clues. Some of the fingerprints on the steering wheel of Taylor's car did not belong to her. Investigators also reviewed the recording from a surveillance camera located at the entrance to the dormitory where she lived. On the night of her disappearance at 10:18 p.m., Taylor entered the student dormitory. Seconds later, some guy who apparently was waiting for someone appeared in frame. At one point, he looked directly into the camera. A few minutes later, the man disappeared from the camera's field of view, and Taylor came out of the dorm. Detectives did not consider this a coincidence. They quickly established his connection with Taylor's car. The police checked the fingerprints found on the car, and they found a match. The fingerprints belonged to 37-year-old Benjamin Foley, who, 2 years before Taylor went missing, was arrested by police for assaulting his ex-girlfriend and eventually spent 3 months in prison. As it turned out, the man who was on that recording was Benjamin Foley. But during the investigation, the police learned an even more surprising fact. Taylor met Foley while still a high school student. In February 2005, Taylor and her father attended an open house at her future university. They came there to get acquainted with the curriculum and the life of the students. During the visit, Taylor stayed overnight at her friend's apartment. He was already studying at Virginia Commonwealth University. And that's when she met Benjamin Foley, her friend's roommate. Benjamin, or Ben as people called him, had 2 daughters who lived with their mother. He was divorced. However, he looked much younger than he was and led a lifestyle typical of people half his age. At some point that night, Ben and Taylor were left alone in the apartment. They ended up having an intimate relationship. After returning home to Vienna, Taylor continued communicating with Foley by email. The next time they met was in the summer when Taylor visited the campus before the start of the academic year to resolve some issues related to her studies. Being an amateur photographer, Benjamin arranged a photo shoot for Taylor. She liked his non-standard personality. Moreover, he treated her like an adult. Taylor once confessed to her best friend that she and Foley had an intimate relationship, and she had no regrets about it. However, she also didn't want it to happen again. Benjamin Foley became the main and only suspect in the case of Taylor Bell's disappearance. The police invited him to the station for questioning. He denied any and all involvement in Taylor's disappearance. However, when the police informed him that they had found his fingerprints in Taylor's car, he admitted that he often was inside her car because he was in an intimate relationship with her. Benjamin also added that he saw her on the evening she disappeared. They exchanged a few words and then said their goodbyes. The investigators didn't believe his story. They in turn acquired a search warrant for his apartment. What they found in his apartment surprised even experienced investigators. They seized knives, several computers, and CDs. There were thousands of photos on the hard drive since Foley was a photographer, but what the investigators did not expect to see was a collection of adult videos featuring teenage boys. I think you understand what kind of videos we're talking about. Foley wasn't featured on them, he just collected them. Foley claimed none of those adult videos found on the computer were his. He said they belonged to his elderly neighbor, who died not so long ago. But those videos were not only on hard drives, but also on CDs, signed in Foley's handwriting. Therefore, his story about the deceased neighbor who collected all this wasn't true. Possession of such video materials is a criminal offense, so Foley was arrested on September 23, 2005. But was he also involved in Taylor's disappearance? The investigators had to find the answer to this question. Even if Foley knew something about it, he refused to talk. Foley had lots of photos of Taylor on his computer. There were also many pictures of abandoned buildings, strange objects, and symbols. However, all this was not enough to connect Foley with the disappearance of Taylor, the search for whom was still ongoing. He continued to insist that he did not know where she could have gone. Detectives looked through thousands of photographs stored on his computers and interviewed people from his inner circle, hoping to get some clues. They assumed that if Taylor was dead, then Foley had hidden her body in a place where it would be difficult to find her. They decided Foley's photos of various remote areas and abandoned buildings could help find such a place. With all this in mind, investigators talked to Foley's ex-girlfriend, with whom he broke up not so long ago. They showed her photos of abandoned buildings from his computer. They were surprised when his ex pointed to one of the photos and said that the abandoned house depicted in it was near her parents' house in Matthews County, and that she once took Foley there to take some pictures. The photo had a caption, "Home, Sweet Home." The fact that the suspect's computer had a photo of a house located about 100 miles from Richmond could mean absolutely nothing. But in the absence of any other leads, the police sent a group of officers to Matthews County. This house was in a remote and isolated location. It's perfect for hiding things you wouldn't want anyone to find. On October 5, 2005, 30 days after Taylor's disappearance, while inspecting site after site, officers at some point felt a strong, unpleasant smell. It was not difficult to find the source of it. The police found human remains in a shallow ditch. However, the degree of composition and the fact that the remains were exposed to animals impeded the officers' ability to determine whether or not the body was Taylor's. A few days later, the police department released a statement saying that the results of the dental examination left no doubt that the remains found did in fact belong to Taylor Bell. It was an unbearable loss for Taylor's parents. In her emotional statement, Janet Pelissara expressed hope that the person who deprived her of her only daughter would be sentenced to death. After the police found the remains, Benjamin Foley became more cooperative. He realized that his fingerprints and DNA found in Taylor's car could link him to her death, especially since he was the last person to see her alive. In addition, Foley already faced a long prison sentence for the videos found in his apartment. Therefore, he decided to change tactics and talk to the investigators again. Foley admitted that he was with Taylor the night she died. She came to him very upset because she had just broken up with her boyfriend. Foley claimed she wanted to get back at him. According to him, they drank in his apartment and had intercourse, but then, allegedly, Taylor wanted something more. They went to the dorm, where Taylor took the keys to her car. CCTV cameras captured this moment. Foley did not go inside, but waited for her at the entrance. He claimed that when Taylor returned, she had a printout with her describing an action called breath control play. To be more precise, it described asphyxia during intimate contact. They got into her car and drove to a deserted place in Matthews County he had visited before. After stopping, they moved to the back seat and again entered into an intimate relationship. According to Foley, during the intercourse, Taylor asked him to start choking her. He refused to do this, but then Taylor threatened him and said she would tell the police and her mother about him. Scared, he did what she asked him to do. Investigators believed that Foley was trying to place all responsibility on Taylor with this story. He was trying to say, "I didn't want to do this, but she left me no choice." He also added that he was under the influence of some illegal substances, and at some point, he realized that Taylor had lost consciousness. Foley panicked, drove back to Richmond, and went to bed, leaving Taylor lying in the car. When he woke up in the morning and returned to the car, he finally realized that she was dead. Investigators did not believe these words. If Taylor had died in the car and stayed there for a while, a service dog trained to detect dead bodies would have picked up her scent during the initial search. But the dog didn't pick up any scents in her car. So was Foley lying? He provided an explanation for this, saying that he had cleaned the seats with bleach. However, the criminologists who examined Taylor's car found no traces or even smell of bleach. Foley was coming up with more and more details to make his story more believable. In the morning, after realizing that Taylor was dead, he covered her with a blanket, returned to Matthews County, and left her there. It's important to emphasize that everything mentioned earlier was Foley's story. Only 2 people knew what actually happened to Taylor, one of whom was already dead. According to Foley, Taylor asked him to choke her. But why did he have to drive from Richmond to the woods 100 miles away? Foley's testimony was supposed to convince everyone that it was an accident. The condition in which the police found Taylor's remains did not allow forensic experts to determine the cause of her death. She was exposed to the weather and animals for a month. Investigators analyzed all her social media accounts, checked her email, internet search history, personal diary, and other personal belongings, and found no other evidence that would indicate that Taylor was interested in choking games during intimacy. A piece of duct tape on the outside of Taylor's jacket sleeve indicated that Foley's story was a lie. It was safe to assume that her hands were tied. When the police asked Foley to explain this, he added new details to his story to absolve himself of responsibility and shift it to Taylor. He claimed that he had forgotten to mention the duct tape. He said Taylor wanted to feel kidnapped and asked to tie her hands. Foley repeatedly stressed that everything was consensual. At trial, his lawyers planned to present Taylor not as a naive freshman, but as a girl who liked all of these intimate games. Foley mentioned numerous websites dedicated to his interests in art, Gothic culture, and skulls, and he had a bumper sticker plastered van that he decorated with dozens of license plates that he had collected over the years. Investigators believed Foley had put one of the license plates from his van on Taylor's car to make it harder for police to find it. Facing a life sentence just for the videos found on his computers and CDs, Foley sought out and agreed to a plea deal. Although he was insistent that what happened was an accident, at a court hearing on August 9, 2006, he stood up and, holding photos of his daughters in his hands, entered an Alford plea to a second-degree crime. In American judicial law, an Alford plea is a guilty plea in a criminal court, in which a defendant does not admit guilt but admits that the evidence presented by the prosecution is likely to convince the judge and jury of his guilt. Alford pleas are permissible in almost all federal and state courts in the United States, except for Indiana, Michigan, and New Jersey. Therefore, while not expressly admitting guilt, Foley admitted that the prosecution had sufficient evidence to convince the jury of guilt. As part of this plea agreement, the charges related to possession of prohibited videos involving children were dropped. Instead of life in prison, Benjamin Foley got 30 years. He may be released on parole in 2031 when he will be 64 years old. Foley sobbed at times during the hearing, but offered no apologies. His attorneys said afterward that Foley, a father of 2 young girls who live with their mother in Pennsylvania, was reluctant to enter a plea. He was very emotional, said William Johnson, one of his attorneys. He contends that he thought highly of Taylor. He contends that he never wanted to do her harm, Johnson said. He's very depressed, but he's resolved to his fate. Taylor Bell's mother, who attended the hearing with about 35 relatives, said afterward that she was pleased with the outcome. "I'm happy it's over," she said, adding that it does little to help her heal. "I don't know that I'll ever have closure. How do you have closure on losing your only daughter? I don't think there ever will be. Do you think there was any truth in Folly's testimony? Share your opinion in the comments, and thank you for watching this video to the end.